Expenses typically refer to the cost of work carried out at a property on behalf of the landlord. They can be created when adding a supplier invoice, or from a maintenance job, or from the expenses page of the property. Click on the Add link and enter the details of the expense. In the expense type field, if the landlord is being charged, set this to property expense, or tenant expense if the tenant is. By default, the system will deduct property expenses from rent on the landlord's statement, but if there is a float set up against the landlord, then the system will try and use that instead. To override this and not use any float that exists, tick this box. If the expense is recurring, then tick this box and enter the recurring details here. You also have the option to add a supplier invoice at the same time by ticking this box and entering the invoice details. Then click on Add to save the expense. Expenses charged to the landlord will then be included in the next landlord statement that covers the date of the expense. Marking the statement as settled will then mark the expense as paid. Occasionally, a landlord may make a one-off payment to you for an expense. One way to handle this in the system is to add a payment to the landlord's float, and the system will then use the float amount to pay off the expenses rather than the rent. Alternatively, and probably the best approach, is to generate a landlord statement with just the expense on it, and then mark the statement as settled, entering in the amount the landlord has paid you on the Mark as Settled screen. However, if there are other items being drawn into the statement, as is the case here, then you can use the statement date to control what items are included. In this example, the expense is dated the 26th of February, and the tenant receipt that is being included dated the 28th. If we set a statement date of 26th of February, then only the expense will be included on the statement, and we can mark it as settled with the payment from the landlord.